NSE 7_EFW 7.2 exam will be retired on May 31, 2025, and the new upgrade test is FCSS_EFW_AD 7.4. NSE 7_EFW 7.2 exam practice questions are available in the video for you to study. In which two ways does FortiManager function when it is deployed as a local FDS? Choose 2. A. It can be configured as an update server, a rating server, or both. B. It provides VM license validation services. C. It supports rating requests from non-FortiGate devices. D. It caches available firmware updates for unmanaged devices. The answer is AB. When deployed as a local FortiGuard distribution server, FDS, FortiManager functions in several capacities. It can act as an update server, a rating server, or both, providing firmware updates and FortiGuard database updates. Additionally, it plays a crucial role in VM license validation services, ensuring that the connected FortiGate devices are operating with valid licenses. However, it does not support rating requests from non-FortiGate devices nor cache firmware updates for unmanaged devices. Fortinet FortiOS Handbook. FortiManager as a local FDS configuration. Which ADVPN configuration must be configured using a script on FortiManager when using VPN Manager to manage FortiGate VPN tunnels? A. Enable Add VPN in IPsec Phase 1. B. Disable Add Route on Hub. C. Configure IP addresses on IPsec virtual interlaces. D. Set protected network to all. The answer is A. To enable Add VPN, you need to edit an SD-WAN overlay template and enable the Auto Discovery VPN toggle. This will automatically add the required settings to the IPsec template and the BGP template. You cannot enable Add VPN directly in the IPsec Phase 1 settings using VPN Manager. Which FortiGate in a security IORIC sends TOGs to FortiAnalyzer? A. Only the root FortiGate. B. Each FortiGate in the security fabric. C. The FortiGate devices performing network address translation, NAT, or Unified Threat Management, UTM. If configured. D. Only the last FortiGate that handled a session in the security fabric. The answer is B. Option B is correct because each FortiGate in the security fabric can send logs to FortiAnalyzer for centralized logging and analysis. 12. This allows you to monitor and manage the entire security fabric from a single console and view aggregated reports and dashboards. Option A is incorrect because the root FortiGate is not the only device that can send logs to FortiAnalyzer. The root FortiGate is the device that initiates the security fabric and acts as the central point of contact for other FortiGate devices. 3. However, it does not have to be the only log source for FortiAnalyzer. Option C is incorrect because the FortiGate devices performing NAT or UTM are not the only devices that can send logs to FortiAnalyzer. These devices can perform additional security functions on the traffic that passes through them, such as firewall, antivirus, web filtering, etc. 4. However, they are not the only devices that generate logs in the security fabric. Option D is incorrect because the last FortiGate that handled a session in the security fabric is not the only device that can send logs to FortiAnalyzer. The last FortiGate is the device that terminates the session and applies the final security policy 5. However, it does not have to be the only device that reports the session information to FortiAnalyzer. Which configuration can be used to reduce the number of BGP sessions in an IBGP network? A. Root Reflector Peer Enable. B. Root Reflector Client Enable. C. Root Reflector Enable. D. Root Reflector Server Enable. The answer is B. To reduce the number of BGP sessions in an IBGP network, you can use a root reflector, which acts as a focal point for IBGP sessions and re-advertises the prefixes to all other peers. To configure a root reflector, you need to enable the root reflector client option on the neighbor group settings of the hub device. This will make the hub device act as a root reflector server and the other devices as root reflector clients. Which two statements about IKE Vision 2 are true? Choose 2. A. Phase 1 includes main mode. B. It supports the Extensible Authentication Protocol, EAP. C. It supports the XAuth protocol. D. It exchanges a minimum of 4 messages to establish a secure tunnel. The answer is BD. IKE version 2 supports the Extensible Authentication Protocol, EAP, which allows for more flexible and secure authentication methods. 1. IKE version 2 also exchanges a minimum of 4 messages to establish a secure tunnel, which is more efficient than IKE version 12. After enabling IPS, you receive feedback about traffic being dropped. What could be the reason? A. NP-Excel mode is set to enable. B. Traffic submit is set to disable. C. IPS is configured to monitor. D. Fail open is set to disable. The answer is D. Fail open is a feature that allows traffic to pass through the IPS sensor without inspection when the sensor fails or is overloaded. If fail open is set to disable, traffic will be dropped in such scenarios. 1. Which 3 conditions are required for 2 FortiGate devices to form an OSPF adjacency? Choose 3. A. OSPF interface network types match. B. OSPF router IDs are unique. C. OSPF interface priority settings are unique. D. OSPF link costs match. E. Authentication settings match. The answer is A. Option A is correct because the OSPF interface network types determine how the routers form adjacencies and exchange LSAs on a network segment. The network types must match for the routers to become neighbors. 1. Option B is correct because the OSPF router IDs are used to identify each router in the OSPF domain and to establish adjacencies. The router IDs must be unique for the routers to become neighbors too. Option E is correct because the authentication settings control how the routers authenticate each other before exchanging OSPF packets. The authentication settings must match for the routers to become neighbors. 3. Option C is incorrect because the OSPF interface priority settings are used to elect the designated router, doctor, and the backup designated router, BDR, on a broadcast or non-broadcast multi-access network. The priority settings do not have to be unique for the routers to become neighbors, but they affect the DR/BDR election process for. Option D is incorrect because the OSPF link costs are used to calculate the shortest path to a destination network based on the bandwidth of the links. The link costs do not have to match for the routers to become neighbors, but they affect the routing decisions. 5. You want to configure faster failure detection for BGP. Which parameter should you enable on both connected FortiGate devices? A. eBGP enforced multi-hop BBFD. C. Distribute list in. D. Graceful restart. The answer is B. BFD, bidirectional forwarding detection, is a protocol that provides fast failure detection for BGP by sending periodic messages to verify the connectivity between two peers. 1. BFD can be enabled on both connected FortiGate devices by using the command set BFD enable under the BGP configuration. 2. You contoured an address object on the tool FortiGate in a security fabric. This object is not synchronized with the downstream device. Which two reasons could be the cause? Choose 2. A. The address object on the tool FortiGate has fabric object set to disable. B. The root FortiGate has configuration sync set to enable. C. The downstream FortiGate has fabric object unification set to local. D. The downstream FortiGate has configuration sync set to local. The answer is AD. Option A is correct because the address object on the tool FortiGate will not be synchronized with the downstream devices if it has fabric object set to disable. This option controls whether the address object is shared with other FortiGate devices in the security fabric or not. 1. Option C is correct because the downstream FortiGate will not receive the address object from the tool FortiGate if it has fabric object unification set to local. This option controls whether the downstream FortiGate uses the address objects from the root FortiGate or its own local address objects. 2. Option B is incorrect because the root FortiGate has configuration sync set to enable by default, which means that it will synchronize the address objects with the downstream devices unless they are disabled by the fabric object. Option 3. Option D is incorrect because the downstream FortiGate has configuration sync set to local by default, which means that it will receive the address objects from the root FortiGate unless they are overridden by the fabric object unification. Option 4. You created a VPN community using VPN Manager on FortiManager. You also added gateways to the VPN community. Now you are trying to create firewall policies to permit traffic over the tunnel. However, the VPN interfaces do not appear as available options. A. Create interface mappings for the IPsec VPN interfaces before you use them in a policy. B. Refresh the device status using the device manager so that FortiGate populates the IPsec interfaces. C. Configure the Phase 1 settings in the VPN community that you didn't initially configure. FortiGate automatically generates the interfaces after you configure the required settings. D. Install the VPN community and gateway configuration on the FortiGate devices so that the VPN interfaces appear on the policy objects on FortiManager. The answer is D. to use the VPN interfaces in a policy, you need to install the VPN community and gateway configuration on the FortiGate devices first. This will create the VPN interfaces on the FortiGate and sync them with FortiManager.